to this edition of News Today, a series in which we discuss and briefly analyze the important news of the day. Let's have a look at today's main headlines. A report titled Micro Matters Macro Views was released by the Microfinance Industry Network. The International Monetary Fund published the first installment of the Central Bank Digital Currency Virtual Handbook. The 10th Association of the Southeast Asian Nations Defense Ministers Meeting Plus held in Jakarta, Indonesia. The Advertising Standards Council of India proposes draft guidelines for environmental or green claims in advertising to make advertising free of greenwashing. Bangalore Climate Action Plan unveiled in line with the city's commitment to C40 cities. Report titled Sand and Dust Storms, a Guide to Mitigation, Adaptation, Policy and Risk Management Measures in Agriculture released. Starting with today's first news, a report titled Micro Matters Macro View was released by the Microfinance Industry Network. The Microfinance Industry Network is an association of non-bank finance company microfinance institutions established in the year 2009. It is an umbrella body of microfinance institutions of the country. Before moving on, let's first discuss the concept of microfinance in more details. Microfinance refers to collateral-free loans given to individuals belonging to low-income households, that is, households having annual income up to Rs 3 lakh. Microfinance is quite significant for India as it helps in bringing the unbanked and underbanked population into the formal financial system. Further, it holds importance for women's empowerment as significant proportion of microfinance borrowers are women. It also helps in poverty alleviation efforts by providing the poor with access to credit for income-generating activities, breaking the cycle of poverty, and enabling economic mobility. Additionally, microfinance also facilitates social cohesion and community development through self-help groups and community-based approaches. Given their importance, the Government of India has taken several initiatives for microfinance industry. For instance, the SHG bank linkage program aims to increase the loan volume of the SHGs and modify their money lending pattern from non-income generating activities to production-based activities. The eShakti program seeks to digitize the accounts of various SHGs and to bring the members of the groups under the fold of financial inclusion. And PM Swanidhi is a special microcredit loan facility providing affordable working capital loan to street vendors. However, microfinance institutions in India still face a number of problems like low outreach, high interest rates, negligence of urban poor, and instances of evergreening of overdue loans. Coming back to the report, let's take a look at its key findings. Non-bank finance company microfinance institutions followed by banks are the largest provider of microcredit amongst other regulated entities. Microfinance institutions' gross non-performing assets decreased from 5.6% in the financial year 2022 to 2.7% in the financial year 2023. The share of East and Northeast states fell to 34.9% from 37.7% from last year. In our next news, the International Monetary Fund has published the first installment of the Central Bank Digital Currency Virtual Handbook. Before moving on, let's first take a closer look at Central Bank Digital Currency or CBDC and understand its need. CBDC is the legal tender issued by a country's central bank in a digital form. The Reserve Bank of India has launched the pilot of CBDC in both wholesale and retail segments. CBDC are considered vital in today's world as they will enable a more real-time, cost-effective, seamless integration of cross-border payment systems. They are also expected to reduce costs associated with physical cash management, promote financial inclusion, and establish a cashless society. CBDCs can also safeguard the trust in national currency vis-à-vis proliferation of crypto assets. However, currently the CBDC ecosystem faces numerous challenges, including cybersecurity risks, bank disintermediation, and privacy issues. Coming back to the news, the handbook is a reference guide for policymakers and experts on developing frameworks for CBDC. 11 countries across the world have already launched CBDCs, while around 130 countries representing 98% of global GDP are still exploring them. Now let's take a look at guidelines given in the handbook for central banks to help adoption of CBDC. Central banks need to develop a dynamic decision-making approach that is adaptable, iterative, and responsive to rapidly changing landscape. They should establish a clear view of macro financial risks that can arise due to the use of CBDC. Further, central banks should identify key stakeholders and prepare a strategy to engage with them. Additionally, robust institutional, legal, and technological safeguards should be adopted by central banks to protect user privacy while ensuring compliance with anti-money laundering standards. Moving on, the 10th ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus or ADMM-Plus was held in Jakarta, Indonesia. ADMM-Plus, established in the year 2010, is a platform for ASEAN or Association of Southeast Asian Nations and its 8 dialogue partners, also known as Plus countries. These Plus countries include Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, South Korea, Russia, and USA. ADMM is the highest defense consultative and cooperative mechanism in ASEAN with the objective to strengthen security and defense cooperation for peace and stability. The main focus areas of ADMM Plus are maritime security, counter-terrorism, humanitarian assistance and disaster management, peacekeeping operations, military medicine, humanitarian mine action, and lastly, cyber security. Coming to the key developments of the meeting, India's proposal to co-chair expert working group on counter-terrorism has been endorsed by the ADMM+. India has also committed towards result-oriented cooperation with ADMM+ for enhancing maritime security in the region. Having said this, let's discuss what has been India's role in maritime security. India supports a rule-based order through the implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea of 1982. The convention ensures freedom of navigation, unimpeded lawful commerce, among other things. India also emphasizes on dialogue and diplomacy for peace and stability. India also plays a crucial role in securing sea lanes and choke points such as Malacca Strait through regular surveillance. Also, India facilitates capacity building through exercises like Singapore-India Maritime Bilateral Exercise and defense cooperation. For example, India has signed a deal to export BrahMos missiles to Philippines.
Now the next news. Recently, the Advertising Standards Council of India or the ASCI has proposed draft guidelines for environmental or green claims in advertising to make advertising free of greenwashing. The ASCI was formed in 1985 as a self-regulatory organization by professionals from the advertising and media industry to keep Indian ads decent, fair, and honest. Coming to greenwashing, also called greenwashing, is a deceptive practice of making misleading environmental claims. Environmental claims mainly suggest or create an impression that a product or a service has a neutral or positive impact and is less damaging to the environment. It utilizes different methods such as fibbing or making false claims such as net zero, green, ecological, etc. and vagueness, that is being non-specific about processes or materials used. The term greenwashing was coined by J. Westerveld in 1986. Now coming to the proposed guidelines. Absolute claims such as environment-friendly, eco-friendly, sustainable, planet-friendly must be supported by a high level of substantiation. Environmental claims must be based on the full life cycle of the advertised product or service. Certifications and seals of approval should make clear which attributes of products or services have been evaluated. Claims of a product being compostable, biodegradable, recyclable, non-toxic, free of, etc. should be based on reliable scientific evidence. Let's briefly go through the other initiatives taken in India to check greenwashing. Number 1, SEBI's Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting or BRSR norms. Number 2, the Reserve Bank of India's announcement to join Global Financial Innovation Network's Greenwashing Tech Sprint. Lastly, the SEBI issued do's and don'ts related to green bonds. Coming to the next news. Recently, the Bengaluru Climate Action Plan has been unveiled in line with the city's commitment to C40 cities. Bruhat Bengaluru Mahanagar Palike or BBMP, the city's urban local body, is made responsible for completing most of the set goals. The C40 is a global network of nearly 100 mayors of the world's leading cities that are united in action to confront the climate crisis. 6 Indian cities, namely Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Bengaluru, and Ahmedabad, are parties to it. Now, coming back to the City Climate Action Plan or the CCAP. It is the process of developing a framework for identifying and implementing climate actions like mitigation and adaptation for a city along with its developmental plans to improve its climate resilience. Now, why there is a need for a CCAP? Well, cities consume 3/4 of energy and generate about 75% of the worldwide global CO2 emissions. Next, to identify the climate risks and vulnerabilities like urban flooding, urban heat islands, pollution, a CCAP is very important. It is also required to fix goals and action plans for different sectors like transport, energy, and waste management. Cities need at least US $29.4 trillion between 2018 and 2030, according to international financial corporations, to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Now, let's go through some related news. The Union Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs, or MOHUA, has launched the City Investments to Innovate, Integrate and Sustain 2.0 Challenge, or the Cities 2.0 Challenge. This is a program which is conceived by the concerned ministry in partnership with the French Development Agency, or AFD, and the German Promotional Bank, KfW, the European Union, and the National Institute of Urban Affairs. Cities 2.0 envisages supporting competitively selected projects promoting a circular economy with a focus on integrated waste management at the city level, climate-oriented reform actions at the state level, and institutional strengthening and knowledge dissemination at the national level. Now coming to the next news. A report titled Sand and Dust Storms, or SDS, a guide to mitigation, adaptation, policy and risk management measures, has been released by the Food and Agriculture Organization, or the FAO. In the report, the FAO has highlighted that SDS frequency is consistent with climate change projections. It indicates the expansion of global drylands, increased aridity, and worsening drought conditions. SDS occurs when strong turbulent winds erode small particles from dryland surfaces with little or no vegetation cover. 75% of global dust comes from natural sources and 25% from anthropogenic sources. The major anthropogenic factors responsible for SDS include land use change, agriculture, and deforestation. Let's understand the implications of SDS. SDS affects 11 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. For instance, progress in SDG 6, that is clean water and sanitation, is disrupted as dust depositions are compromising water quality. Deposition of dust on glaciers induces a warming effect and increases the melting of ice. It reduces agriculture yield due to sand blasting and thus damage plants by impact, burial, and exposure of plant roots. Now coming to the recommendations. Sustainable land and water management, structural stabilization measurements through windbreaks, agroforestry and afforestation, risk and impact assessment and vulnerability mapping. Lastly, strengthening of risk governance and increasing investment and financing in SDS risk reduction. Let's go through the various initiatives taken to curb SDS. At the global level, UNCCD, or the United Nations Conventions to Combat Desertification, was enforced. The United Nations Coalition on Combating SDS was launched at COP14 of UNCCD in 2019. And lastly, the Sand and Dust Storm Project was launched by the WMO. At the national level, Aravalli Green Wall Project was launched to create buffer area around the Aravalli Hill Range. And there is a mission called the National Mission for Green India under National Action Plan for Climate Change. The place in the news is Gulf of Guinea. Recently, the Indian Navy has successfully conducted an anti-piracy patrol in the Gulf of Guinea. Let's briefly go through its political features. The Gulf lies in the eastern tropical Atlantic Ocean and off the western coast of Africa. Its coastline comprises 17 countries starting from Senegal to Angola. Now coming to the geographical features, major rivers like Niger and Volta drain into the Gulf. Its coastline forms part of the western edge of the African tectonic plate. The region is also known for its natural resources like oil, natural gas, and minerals.
As we conclude today's main news, let's go through some quick updates. US and China, which together account for 38% of the world's greenhouse gases, has announced cooperation in addressing the climate crisis. They agreed to support the G20 leaders' declaration to pursue efforts to triple renewable energy capacity globally by 2030. NEST initiative is a new rating and certification initiative for green buildings launched by the Indian Green Building Council. It aims to encourage individual house owners and the residential sector to adopt green building features. A new study suggests that gamma ray bursts have the potential to temporarily destroy the ozone layer. Gamma ray bursts are the most powerful and violent explosions in the known universe. The International Energy Agency released the second edition of the World Energy Employment Report 2023. The report tracks the evolution of the energy workforce from before the pandemic to today. NASA is testing Exobiology Extent Life Surveyor, a futuristic snake-shaped robot. It is a versatile robot that would autonomously map, traverse, and explore previously inaccessible destinations. Mitra Shakti 2023 was held recently. It is a joint military exercise between India and Sri Lanka. The cryogenic upper stage of the LV-M3-M4 launch vehicle made re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere in compliance with the 25-year rule. The 25-year rule provides that satellites and orbital stages are to be commanded to re-enter Earth's atmosphere within 25 years of mission completion if deployment is in low Earth orbit. Yogini Chamunda and Gomukhi idols were repatriated to India from the United Kingdom under the India Pride project. They were stolen from an 8th century temple in Lokhri, Uttar Pradesh. Yoginis are a group of powerful female divinities associated with the tantric mode of worship. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to the test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.